Penn State Wrestling advances 6 into the finals. 3 of them lose their semifinal bouts. Expectations, were they too high? But with the results being a little disappointing, Penn State still had a pretty successful day.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State Wrestling. Thank you so much for checking out this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am your host of the show. It is a live show, so yes, please contribute your thoughts down in the comments section. And we got plenty to address here, as there was so much action for Penn State Wrestling. They go 6 of 9 in these semifinal bouts, with Beau Bartlett and Shayne Van Ness dropping the surprising losses to their counterparts, and Josh Barr going up against a tough rematch in Jacob Cardenas. So plenty to address. Let's just start with the results in general for anybody that may have missed it. So Luke Lilledahl ends up knocking off the number 1 wrestler in Matt Ramos at 125, 12-4 major decision. Remember, Braden Davis was down in consolations. He's a part of this discussion as well because he wrestled back. He qualifies now for NCAAs and had 2 solid, came out right away and tech fouled his opponent in that first consolations match. So he is qualified for NCAAs and put up 27 points between his 2 consolation matches. This is where it got surprising. Beau Bartlett, somebody he pinned a season ago, but how much things can change in a year. Vance Vombauer gets revenge, winning 5-3 over Beau Bartlett. At 149, Shayne Van Ness. Now this one, I kind of saw that Vombauer would be a challenge for Bartlett. Didn't necessarily buy into the fact that he would probably win, but the one that did surprise me more was Cannon Webster over Shayne Van Ness. 4-2 loss for Van Ness. He is in consolations. And then this was where everything was going to get fixed. Tyler Kasak, Mitchell Mesenbrink, Levi Haines, Carter Starocci were on absolute cleanup duty. Kasak pinning Antrell Taylor in 1 minute and 18 seconds. And then Mitchell Mesenbrink, he just downright broke Beau Mantanona by a tech fall, winning 25-8. Levi Haines gets a solid decisive victory over Patrick Kennedy, 10-3. Carter Starocci defeats, same thing, solid major decision victory, 12-2 over Jackson Smith of Maryland. And then we get to 197, and Josh Barr, I didn't think he'd be able to follow it up. Jacob Cardenas is elite of the elite when it comes to, he's an NCAA title contender. It is tough to beat somebody 2 times in a row of this caliber. 4-1 in sudden victory. This one doesn't shock me, but it's simply back to the drawing board. I don't think there's too many big concerns here. You lost by 1 takedown to an NCAA title contender. And then at heavyweight, Greg Kirkfleet, solid decisive victory, 9-1 major decision. I think he had over 4 minutes of riding time against Josh Heinzelman of Michigan. So Penn State gets 6 into the championships, but there's a lot to it. It somewhat feels a little bit bittersweet because the expectation was, in addition to those 6, Beau Bartlett and Shayne Van Ness should have joined them as well. Now, I don't know how much everybody should complain, in a sense, when it comes to Beau Bartlett, because Jesse Mendez, the other favorite to get to the 141-pound championship, ends up losing to Brock Hardy. Brock Hardy and Vance Vombauer just, they reset, they crumpled up the bracket and threw it out the window. So kudos to them, because I did not want to discount them. It was more of a confidence in both Beau Bartlett and Jesse Mendez to get the job done. But it was not to discredit and say, hey, Brock Hardy is not close. Brock Hardy is a talented wrestler. He's defeated Bartlett in the past, and then Bartlett got his revenge 2 other times, but these were always close. So Hardy is right there. He is in that, and now he's brought himself up into that category where it's not just Mendez and Bartlett and Andrew Ramirez. Brock Hardy's in this conversation as well going into NCAAs, and the same thing with Vance Vombauer. So everything was status quo for the heavy favorites, if you will, except Luke Lilledahl. Put some respect on Luke Lilledahl's name. At 125, throughout the week, what did we talk about on this show? We said that Luke Lilledahl was going to have a similar sort of run to Tyler Kasak without the loss, right? But Kasak, when he got into wrestlebacks, when he got to constellations at NCAAs, something just clicked for him. The switch had flipped. And for Luke Lilledahl, the exact same thing was going to happen here in the postseason. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And for Lilledahl, from start to finish, was in control against the number one wrestler at 125. Undefeated for the entire season, did not surrender a takedown at any other point in time. Now, granted, he did surrender a takedown to Nicolas Rivera of Wisconsin, but up until that point, no takedown surrendered. And then Luke Lilledahl in the first period gets not one, but two takedowns against that number one wrestler. So Lilledahl, this was expected over here, that Lilledahl was going to get past Matt Ramos. I don't know about a major decision. I didn't think I was expecting a 12-4 result like that. But with just how strong Lilledahl's offense is, it is tough to keep up with him. And do we see a common theme here from this session of the Big Ten semifinals? Yes, it's not necessarily rocket science that, oh, the wrestler that scored more points ended up winning and moving on. But the ones that pushed the pace, the wrestlers that were more aggressive on offense, Luke Lilledahl, Mitchell Mesenbrink, Levi Haines, and I get it. It's granted, it's matchup. I'm not saying that Shayne Van Ness and that Beau Bartlett can't put offense together, because we've seen that. Even Braden Davis to tech fall his opponent in consolations. So Cannon Webster and Vance Vombauer were just very tough to score against. But I notice also in the same breath that Luke Lilledahl and Mitchell Mesenbrink and Carter Starocci and all of these wrestlers that really can put up points at will regardless of matchup are the ones that ultimately advance here to go on to their respective Big Ten championships. Now let's compare and contrast, and let's start this dialogue a little bit and then address it probably by itself. But there's so many different directions to go with this. The results are good, but they're also disappointing. But when you compare it to last year, Penn State did end up having 5 individual champions. They're on a similar pace right now. Greg Kirkfleet's kind of the only question mark, and it's because of Gable Steveson. It's not because Kirkfleet isn't the elite of the elite. Steveson just happens to be in the way. But when you look at last year's group in 2024 that put up 170.5 points at Big Ten titles, at the Big Ten championships, and then Braden Davis wins a title, shockingly, at 125. There are 6 finalists here, exactly the same as a season ago, and then the 1 second place finisher in Beau Bartlett, or 2 actually, Bernie Truax. I don't want to leave Bernie Truax out of all of this. Took silver, Beau Bartlett. So they actually have 1 fewer finalists than a season ago, but have the opportunity, I think, because it's hard to put too much confidence into Greg Kirkfleet. Could it be done? Yes. Could they get a full sweep? Absolutely. But it's going to be tough to say that as 6 out of 6 when you have Gable Steveson there at heavyweight. And then at third place, I fully expect all 4 of the remaining Penn State wrestlers down in consolations to get to their respective third place bout. I mean, that's it. I feel like that's par for the course almost with this Penn State wrestling team. Braden Davis should get there. Beau Bartlett should get there. Now, Beau Bartlett's probably going to run into a Jesse Mendez. For Shayne Van Ness and Josh Barr, their paths seem a little easier, for a lack of a better term there. So aside from Bartlett, Van Ness, Braden Davis, if he's going to continue to wrestle, right? If he's not going to injury default or anything, if he's okay to continue through the Big Ten tournament, those guys should be able to take third place handedly. Beau Bartlett probably didn't expect to see Jesse Mendez. That's the thing. Everybody expected Beau Bartlett and Jesse Mendez to meet again at Big Tens, just not in the consolation. So that's the Big Ten Session 2, the semifinals in a nutshell. Penn State, like I said, that's a solid day. To get 6 finalists, 1 short from a season ago, will they match that 170.5 point mark from last year? They can. And with the way that they picked up bonus points, it's going to be very close, right? If Penn State was going to reset any of the records or the margins from a season ago, it was going to be very close. These aren't easy records to topple. These aren't easy standards to break. But for Penn State, They can absolutely do it. I think five champions is very realistic. Greg Kirkfleet, the jury's out there against Gable Steveson, and then everybody else has a chance at third place as well. So Penn State's going to be lined up all up and down the podium there, but because of the standard, because of where the bar is for Penn State wrestling, it doesn't feel as good of a finish to session 2 as it should. And that's the honest truth of it, but that's where the expectations are for Penn State wrestling. So this is a live show, so we're going to get to the live chat on the other side of this break and talk more about those losses individually, what went wrong with Beau Bartlett, Shayne Van Ness, and Josh Barr. That is coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there is no better place to get in on that action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Using FanDuel's live betting feature is great because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. So whether you're backing your favorite team for a late game rally or you're picking a player to hit a clutch 3, you'll never feel like you missed your chance. Plus, the app is super easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's right, $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And let's check in on the comments section. Thank you so much for spending late Saturday night here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Start at the top. Oh no, coming to Penn State will be a massive win. We're taking this in a completely different direction. We're talking about oh no, somebody who's not even in the Penn State lineup. So I see that's the conversation back and forth here. Let's talk about the results that happened. Congratulations to Ono for defeating Spencer Lee, right? Bartlett seems to have trouble with guys that are more physical. I really think the disadvantage is just it's twofold. Beau Bartlett's defense is much better than his offense, and it seems to be that the key for a Bartlett win against comparable competition. So now Vance Von Bauer fits in that category. Brock Hardy's in that category. Obviously, Jesse Mendez and Andrew Alirez at 141. And it to speak for itself. And I want to pull up the Intermat rankings as well to see if I'm missing anybody. But yes, what I learned tonight is that the 141-pound weight class has expanded. It is beyond just Beau Bartlett and Jesse Mendez, and yes, Andrew Alirez. Okay, so you don't just accidentally defeat the #1 and #2 wrestlers in the same time frame in real time together. So I think Beau Bartlett's issue is that his offense is not caught up enough with his defense. So if he is from behind, it's also the wrestlers that have these longer, lankier builds. Vance Von Bauer almost, in comparison, does tower over Beau Bartlett. And where Bartlett was able, it's not that Bartlett can't score. We've seen him go on this tear offensively later on in the second half of the season, where to an extent, I can't call it a reinvention, but it does look like a different version of Beau Bartlett. And then you go up against a Vance Von Bauer who just has a physical build where he's able to fend off those attacks, where he's able to counter a lot easier. And Beau Bartlett can't get that reach. And I think that's the difference, because this wasn't a major decision. This wasn't a tech fall. This was a 5-3 decision. And if Bartlett's able, I also don't think Bartlett was aggressive enough. I don't know what he was waiting for. Again, Von Bauer was difficult to score against. And the same thing can be applied. Cannon Webster against Shayne Van Ness. Webster was essentially towering over Van Ness. So it's the build of the wrestler that I'm not trying to make an excuse, but that is an advantage for both of their counterparts, for both Vance Von Bauer and Cannon Webster. It pays to be a little bit taller because you have that size advantage that's going to help you out. So for Penn State, it's not overly concerning, if you will, but what it does is it expands the pool of wrestlers that will contend in the postseason. I mean, Cannon Webster and Vance Von Bauer are still relatively younger wrestlers, if I'm not mistaken. Well, Von Bauer is a junior, but for Webster, he is a redshirt freshman. And what is really intriguing is the fact of how quickly he has matured. He's grown up here, because Van Ness won by major decision when they met in that Penn State Illinois dual meet, and Webster ultimately defeats him there, or in this Big Ten semifinal. But I got to give a lot of credit to Webster. Webster was relentless, and the same thing that happened against Dylan D'Amelio for Van Ness, he was able to fend him off. And Webster, so that worked against D'Amelio, didn't work this time around against Webster. Webster just was relentless. And that's what, I don't know if Van Ness just didn't counter every time. So he fended off a shot. Webster was back in, fended off a shot, back in. Eventually you were going to give one up, and you were just hoping, if you were Van Ness, you were hoping and praying that this was going to go to sudden victory, because whatever Webster was doing, he realized that he was going to get a takedown by any means, as long as the clock wasn't an issue. Clock never became an issue, and he won just before the buzzer hit. So Shayne Van Ness and Beau Bartlett are still NCAA title contenders. Again, what this does is it expands, which is good. It was good, because the conversation, well, it's just Jesse Mendez and Beau Bartlett and Andrew Alirez. Okay, 149, it was just Caleb Henson, Shayne Van Ness, Kyle Parko, and Ridge Lovett. And now you get somebody else in there. I mean, Ridge Lovett kind of put everybody on notice with the way that he demolished Kyle Parko. I mean, my goodness, for somebody that had Ridge Lovett woke up today and said, I am tired of losing to Kyle Parko. That's what his mindset was going into it. And it paid off. You put your mind to something, you're probably going to accomplish it there. And for Ridge Lovett to just destroy, it wasn't just, I mean, that was a tech fall, right? That was a 15-point tech fall for Ridge Lovett. He embarrassed Kyle Parko. For Shayne Van Ness and for Beau Bartlett, it's just kind of picking your spots. Where are you going to get, because this was a 4-1 defeat, a 5-3 defeat, respectively, for both of them. On to Josh Barr, and then pick back up, go back and forth with the comments section as well. But since we're on the topic of Penn State wrestlers losing bouts that they were expected to win, Josh Barr, I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I truly did. Say, hey, Josh Barr, first-year starter, and that's what led me to believe that he wasn't going to be able to do it this time around, is that Barr, being a first-year starter, at some point that experience is going to catch up to you. I'm not saying that Josh Barr is a fraud. I'm not saying that he can't hang with the best of the best. He defeated Jacob Cardenas the first time around. He's defeated everybody else that stood in his way except for Stephen Buchanan. So if the only losses on the season as a first-year starter come to NCAA title contender Buchanan and another NCAA title contender in Cardenas, where you lose in sudden victory because you made the mistake. Barr made the mistake when he tried to flip over. Cardenas said it best. He's like, it was the similar bout, and the guy Barr he fell. He lost his footing when he tried to roll through, and he set up Cardenas for an easy takedown. So if any, I would say that Josh Barr lost, and not necessarily that Jacob Cardenas won. I mean, yes, Cardenas won, but you get my point, is that Barr just has to clean up a non-veteran mistake. That's an experienced mistake. You can't do that. You can't leave yourself wide open for that kind of attack against Cardenas, and you're going to lose every single time. And that's exactly what Cardenas said. He's like, if he's going to do stuff like that, I'm going to win every time. So any of those guys are still NCAA title contenders. My pick was Cardenas over Stephen Buchanan anyway. So I fully expect Cardenas for Big Tens here. Everything's going to reset when we get the bracket for NCAAs, but Barr's only going to get better. Barr's only going to learn from this. Again, Luke Lilledahl goes through that learning curve, and now it's Josh Barr's turn. So six wrestlers go into the finals, and then all four are still in consolations with the expectation that aside from Beau Bartlett, there's no reason to believe that all the three of them and Bartlett, he beat Mendez the first time. It's not like he loses to Mendez every single time. Something's not right with Jesse Mendez. I don't know. And that's crazy to think when you have the bar so set so high for yourself that when you lose to Brock Hardy and then you lose to Beau Bartlett, like that's almost unheard of for Jesse Mendez. But Brock Hardy was up, and then Jesse Mendez was playing catch up the whole time. It's not like Hardy had a last second takedown or something like that. Hardy was in the lead and was in control for most of that matchup. So it's intriguing. It's interesting for the sake of the competition. So let's talk about the paths for tomorrow. And I also want to go circle back to, were expectations too high for this Penn State wrestling team? Was it almost impossible? Was this an impossible challenge for Penn State wrestling that they were never going to achieve it? Well, we're going to discuss all that and more in the final segment of this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's show is also brought to you by Nissan. We're all about stats because numbers don't lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, that's a lot of weight, it can quite literally carry the whole team. Plus the gear wherever you need to go. It's powered by the twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. So whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights with the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. That is nissanusa.com. Were expectations too high for this Penn State wrestling team? I say no. I say no. Is it disappointing at the end of the day that Shayne Van Ness and Josh Barr and Beau Bartlett don't ultimately join everybody else in the championships? Absolutely. But when I look at it, the expectations were there for a reason. I mean, Shayne Van Ness and Beau Bartlett were the 1 seeds. Josh Barr had defeated Jacob Cardenas beforehand. So no, expectations were not too high. That should have been expected. That should have been anticipated. I don't think that was over presumptuous at all, that Penn State could get at least 8 finalists into their respective championships. So Luke Lilledahl, again, over on this end, and if you listen throughout the week, there was a confidence between myself and between Jeff Byers when we got to talk to him that Lilledahl was ready to turn the corner here. So the surprises happen with, hey, look, Braden Davis did lose to Dylan Shaver at the end of the day. That's a tough one. And I think that's more mental than anything else because he's defeated Shaver in the past. And then look at that. We have a live recap here, and Davis goes out and goes into consolations and puts up 27 points for himself. Davis can't score on offense. He struggles. He's the liability in this Penn State lineup. And then the guys that are the presumed favorite, Beau Bartlett, Van Ness, don't end up doing their job. So expectations were not too high, but they were too high in the sense that it's difficult to accomplish. If it wasn't difficult, then everybody would do this. Every Penn State team would be able to reset these records, and that's why they're so lofty, because of the past precedent. So I hope the expectations stay as high as they do. What it does mean in NCAAs, I think it gives a little bit of a reality check that maybe some of the wrestlers aren't as overwhelming as favorites as thought to be. So Shayne Van Ness, maybe I would take him down a notch or two as far as in the race for 149. Same thing with Beau Bartlett at 141. But Luke Lilledahl goes up a bunch. Luke Lilledahl isn't just, oh, will he make the podium? Is he even All-America? No, he's an NCAA title contender. He's put himself into the conversation. So where the stocks have shifted for guys like Beau Bartlett and Shayne Van Ness and Josh Barr, at the end of the day, Luke Lilledahl raised his while everybody else has stayed consistent. So there was a little bit of a shift in the dynamic, but Luke Lilledahl goes up, a couple other wrestlers take a step back, and there's always, at NCAAs, it could be completely, entirely different. Remember, Shayne Van Ness had majored Cannon Webster. He loses by a last second takedown. Okay. Tyler Kasak originally defeated Antrell Taylor by a decision and then goes out and pins him in 1 minute and 18 seconds. So, like I said, stock has changed, but it's also where some guys go lower, other guys have gone higher. So the bar is still about the same, where I think when I look at this Penn State wrestling team overall, that what are the expectations going into NCAAs? Again, they have 6 finalists. They could have 5 individual champions again, just like they did at Big Tens a year ago. So not much is really different, but it's difficult to accomplish these goals. So let's talk about what tomorrow looks like for each individual wrestler. 125, Luke Lilledahl is going to wrestle Caleb Smith, somebody he defeated 4-2. Caleb Smith of Nebraska, he's the 2 seed in this bracket. Braden Davis is still alive in the consolation semifinals. Tough match. This is another reality check. Is Davis, were those consolation wins enough to rebound his mentality and get him ready for a Braxton Brown of Maryland? We shall see. I expect Beau Bartlett to come out with a little bit of fire tomorrow against Joseph Oliveri. That's one that he should. I expect him to win against Oliveri. Yeah, Oliveri's from Rutgers. Shayne Van Ness will wrestle Andrew Clark of Rutgers in that consolation semifinals. Tyler Kasak is going to take on Brandon Cannon of Ohio State. How about that? Of all the Ohio State wrestlers to make a championship, it is Brandon Cannon at 157. So, but I expected Kasak to win Big Tens all along. He's an NCAA title favorite. Kasak goes out and pins Antrell Taylor, who is a fringe, a solid All-America wrestler, fringe NCAA title contender in his own right. Kasak pins him. Mitchell Mesenbrink and Mikey Caliendo. We know how this one ends, but Mantanona certainly gave Mesenbrink everything he could handle early on. But Mesenbrink, that's what he does. He will break you down. He absolutely wore out Mantanona. So Caliendo looks as good. I mean, I think Caliendo's starting to peak. That one's going to be an interesting one. I don't know that this one's going to be tech fall territory for Mesenbrink. Levi Haines against Lenny Pinto. What at 174? Lenny Pinto, what a come from behind win against. I think it was Dan Bronicle. I think it was Danny Bronicle. Yes, it was Danny Bronicle against Pinto, and Pinto with a last second, truly, we're talking 0.5, gets a final takedown with 0.5 seconds to go and needed video review and everything, and they confirmed it. Carter Starocci against Max McAnally of Minnesota at 184. That one's going to be intriguing because Max McAnally is a future face of this class. Do not discount Max McAnally. I think this one will be closer than maybe people anticipate that aren't keeping up with McAnally as much. I watched some of these bouts, especially with today, and McAnally's the real deal. I really like McAnally a lot as a competitor. 197, Josh Barr is into the consolation semifinals. Isaiah Salazar doesn't look like himself. I expect Barr to get at least a major decision in that one. Maybe I'm having a little too much confidence there, but it seems like Penn State wrestlers get stronger with every single defeat, if and when there is one. So I expect Barr to come out firing against Salazar. And then Greg Kirkfleet against Gable Steveson. Of course, most people are going to anticipate that Stevenson's just going to be able to win in convincing or dominant fashion. I think Kirkfleet keeps it close, but it's tough for me to project a win here. I think Tyler Kasak wins. I think Mitchell Mesenbrink wins. Lenny Pinto, I need to give him more credit. I've been discounting him over the course of this weekend. Levi Haines and Lenny Pinto, because he's defeated him before. Haines had a convincing victory over Pinto the first time they met. I think Pinto's out for revenge, and I expect Carter Starocci to win, but Max McAnally will give him everything he can handle. So let's go back to the comments section. I appreciate all of you for joining me here. I see a lot of comments. Let me try to pick back up where I was in the middle. So Shayne Van Ness did not look like himself that match. No, I completely agree. I mean, one point, we're going back to kind of similar mistakes that we saw against Ridge Lovett. That's almost what this match felt like. But where Ridge Lovett was dominant, Cannon Webster, it felt like the reverse. Okay, I'll say what it was actually like. The reverse of the Dylan D'Amelio match, because D'Amelio he was pushing the pace. And Van Ness was able to fend off every takedown and then ultimately counter and get the winning shot. Didn't happen this time around. And I think Van Ness was kind of hoping for a sudden victory. Just didn't get it. Yes, not only did Shayne Van Ness lose, he did not have a takedown. See, a lot of these are about Van Ness. I see more comments about Ono. You can't afford to be off in the championships. I mean, yeah, it's winner take all. You need to have a mindset that and that's the thing about Penn State wrestling, is that most of these wrestlers, they win on even when they're not at their best. And that's what makes them so difficult, is that they will usually win even on their days where they're not their best. So, but on today, they weren't their best and they ended up losing. And I think some wrestlers are really peaking at the right time. Luke Lilledahl's doing that, but so is Vance Fombauer. So is Cannon Webster. So is a Cannon from two Cannons, but different Cannons, Cannon Webster and then Brendan Cannon from Ohio State. Beau in the semifinals didn't look to score offensively, and it cost him in that match. And that's the common theme across the board. When Braden Davis lost to Dylan Shaver, Beau Bartlett losing to Fombauer, Shayne Van Ness losing to Webster, and Josh Barr losing to Cardenas, it is easier said than done. When you see a Luke Lilledahl put up 12 against a Matt Ramos, everybody will most likely want to say, well, why doesn't everybody else do that? Why didn't Van Ness do that? It's a different story. Lilledahl was able to work his moves and go after Ramos, but I agree that at times Bartlett didn't push the pace enough. At times Van Ness didn't push the pace enough, and certainly with Barr. But that's how strong Cardenas, and what we're finding out about those other two wrestlers, is that if you do take a shot, they're going to counter, and they could possibly turn defense into offense. And that's what you really have to be careful of, because then, okay, well, it's not just about surrendering one takedown. Then you're down 2-3 takedowns, and then you absolutely have to get reckless. So if Barr's just going to rattle off all these shot attempts against Jacob Cardenas, eventually Cardenas is going to counter one or two of them and then turn into 2 takedowns, and he's down 6-2, and then you're not even in a situation where you can win or tie or anything like that. You don't go to sudden victory. So it's complicated. I don't think that Penn State is intentionally saying go to sudden victory, don't have any shot attempts. But for Bartlett and Van Ness, they got to be a little pickier, I think. I don't think they chose, I think they were too picky. I think they were too picky. Where you see a Mitchell Mesenbrink, he just goes and goes and goes and goes. You don't necessarily need to be in that category to win. But there were times where, okay, what are you waiting for? What is he showing that you don't like? What is it that, based on his stance, or what are you worried about with this move, that you don't think right now is a good time to try to take a shot or even fake a shot? Zach, in all honesty, Van Ness did not look like himself in the semifinals, and hopefully in NCAA's in 2 weeks, he'll be ready. I mean, they have 2 weeks to prepare. Everybody has 2 weeks to prepare. I'm not going to, failure is not fatal, if for people that know that phrase. I think that applies here. Just because Van Ness lost today, just because Beau Bartlett lost today, just because Josh Barr lost today, doesn't mean that they can rebound. And I think the same thing applies. Just because Luke Lilledahl defeated Matt Ramos doesn't mean that he would win again in a rematch. But what it does is it builds some more confidence, and it builds some more respect when you're analyzing Luke Lilledahl's hypothetical matchups and saying, okay, this guy, should be expected to win. Not just, well, it's a long shot here. It's an upset in the books because of where Lilledahl is, but at the end of the day, with the expectations that Lilledahl has to be a multi NCAA champion, you got to put these expectations on some of these wrestlers sooner rather than later. See, we have Lovett to win it all tomorrow. I think, as he should. Ridge Lovett is like a man with his hair on fire. Ridge Lovett showed a lot. Henson is still your choice for the NCAAs. I mean, Henson defeated Lovett head to head in the season. So see a lot of people for Ridge. Luke was amazing. Yes, he was. Luke better win an NCAA. See, I like how we've jumped from, he's in the Big Ten finals to he better win an NCAA championship. But that's the expectation over here, is that he is an NCAA contender. He is a contender. Is he the favorite? Is he? I would say that Matt Ramos is going to be out for revenge now. There's still 125 is just so loaded. I'm eager to see how he wrestles against, because he at some point he's going to run into, for example, a Vincent Robinson at NC State, or an Eddie Ventresca at Virginia Tech, Troy Spratley of Oklahoma State, and then the defending champ himself, Richie Figueroa of Arizona State. Right, 125 is loaded with a lot of guys that if they go on a run, they can win an NCAA title. But Luke is in that conversation as well. I don't know that anybody stands out among this group anymore. I don't think anybody stands out among this group when you look at 125. It's an even cluster of 8 different wrestlers who could happen to win. Let's see what other comments we have. Vincenzo Joseph proved that Big Ten titles don't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. That's right. He did lose. It was to Marinelli of Iowa, and then ultimately went out and won an NCAA championship. Luke Lilledahl was a step faster than Ramos the entire match, and Ramos is overrated. He beat Spencer Lee, and everyone treated him like an Olympic gold medalist. Ramos is unpredictable at times. He really is. He can go out there and be a dominant wrestler again. He was 23-0, did not surrender a takedown. And then he loses to Luke Lilledahl. Not everybody was expecting that. He did lose to Dean Peterson last year in Big Tens. It's not the first time that he's been upset as a number 1 seed at the Big Ten tournament. So Ramos is not that dominant favorite that everybody makes him out to be, in short. Tyler Kasak was on fire. Yes, Tyler Kasak pinning Antrell Taylor at the end of the day. See, I missed this. So I'm so focused on Big Tens that I'm not seeing the other results. So Richie Figueroa lost at Big 12s. There is not one dominant wrestler at 125. Everybody is vulnerable to an extent. That includes Luke Lilledahl, but it means that Lilledahl has as good of an opportunity as everybody else. I think that's where we're going to wrap it up. I got to the end of the comment section there, and we've gone over 30 minutes, but it was a successful yet somewhat of a disappointing finish to Session 2 for Penn State Wrestling. Hey, they still have 6 finalists for tomorrow. Again, Luke Lilledahl, in addition to Tyler Kasak, Mitchell Mesenbrink, Levi Haines, Carter Starocci, and Greg Kirkfleet will all wrestle for gold tomorrow. Everybody is still alive in consolations as well. Braden Davis, Beau Bartlett, Shayne Van Ness, and Josh Barr. They can all wrestle for third. And then if everybody does what they're supposed to do, this would break the score. Penn State's going to win the team title. So let's also look at the team standings as we wrap up here. Penn State is in first place. They have 145 points. Nebraska's in second with 118.5. Iowa is in third with 98. Consolations pick back up tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And then the championships are at 5:30 Eastern time for anybody that wasn't aware. Thank you so much for joining this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Appreciate each and every one of you for conversations around Penn State wrestling, Penn State football, Penn State men's basketball. Don't miss anything. You want to subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations so that you stay up to date anytime that we go live or have a new show around your favorite Penn State sports teams. And for more discussions around your favorite Penn State sports teams, keep it right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.